Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we've got some pretty big news. miHoYo have just officially revealed Silverwolf's traces and abilities. And over the past week and a half, a lot of people have been asking me about Silverwolf and what I think of her, how she's gonna fit into the meta, but most importantly, they've been linking me a bunch of videos saying that she's gonna be godlike and a must pull and, garbage and complete bait. And I kinda wanted to address that, so in this video we've got Grimro's Godlike or Garbage Silverwolf edition, and of course everything about it from a theory crafting perspective here. Alright, so let me give you guys the TLDR from a theory crafter here. I'm pretty sure that there's no way to actually tell whether Silverwolf is going to be godlike or garbage or a must pull right now. And the reason for that is that no one truly understands exactly how she works. Unless they have literal insider information and they're playing with her in the game, I don't really think that you can say that. And the reason for that is that there's no specifics on exactly how really any of her abilities work in any of the information that's been, floating around on the net or either on the actual release page itself. So it's really too early to say. Now I'm going to give you guys my opinions on her because a lot of people have been asking, but there's really so much stuff that is up in the air which could go either way. It's crazy. Let me give you guys an example here. So the talent states that it can implant a bug on an enemy, right? So you a basic attack, you use a skill, you use an ultimate, use anything, right? You can implant a bug. Now there's 3 different types of bugs, and Silverwolf would ideally like to have all 3 of the bugs active on the enemy. Now let's say in scenario 1 you attack the enemy, you apply a bug, and you get the reduced attack 1. And then on your second attack you attack the enemy and you roll any 3 of the bugs. You could get attack, speed, or defense on this chance to attack. And you roll attack again. Ah, damn it, I missed. Okay, third attack, roll any of the 3. Boom. Okay, I gotta attack again. Okay, this sucks. And you have to reset. And it's RNG based on what bug you get. That's the bad timeline. And that would make Silverwolf substantially worse than the good timeline. The good timeline is you attack the enemy, you get attack. Sick. Now the game is like, okay, you already have attack. Next time you attack, I'm only gonna give you defense or speed because you already have attack. And then you get defense. And then on the third attack, it's like, okay, I already got attack and defense. This time it's gonna be speed. And then you get speed. And you get all 3 of the bugs in 3 actions versus only 1 of the bugs in 3 actions the first time. And that basically completely changes their viability. But that's just one example of how mechanics, which are not stated on the actual thing here, are going to be able to vary wildly. And it's very important to notice here that it says chance to implant a random bug. It says random, so it really could go either way on release. And that's one thing, just one thing, which would dictate whether or not Silverwolf would be godlike or garbage. Alright, so the question remains, is she gonna be someone you're looking to pull though? A lot of people are curious, a lot of people want to know. Well, let me give you guys the lowdown on that exactly. So I would say that Silverwolf is probably one of the riskiest characters that you could pull on her release. And the reason for that is, as I've already stated, it is a lot of mystery marks, a lot of question marks. I'm going to delve a little bit more into that in a second here, but for those people who are looking to pull her on release and you are a little bit on the fence, even though you really want to pull her, I would just wait like 24 hours and there's going to be a billion trillion guides out. People are going to pull her regardless and do guides. And I'm included in that. You guys can see my full guide like mere hours after her release on the Asia server, and you guys can check that out. And it's going to tell you exactly how good she's going to be. But if her banner comes out and you don't know anything about her, I think it's risky. She could go either way. Absolutely, she could be an S+ tier character. There is no doubt in my mind that she has the capability to be that. And she could also be an A tier character, which gets relegated down and down and down, and eventually completely phased out if she doesn't work favorably. So what are the things which would make her an S+ tier character, and what are the things that would make her an A tier character? Well, let me quickly cover that. So I think with her entirety of her kit, her bugs, as well as the damage res, which we have a pretty good idea of how that's going to work, as well as her ultimate decreasing defense, I think overall Silverwolf as a package, as a single target quantum breaker that has the capability to lower an enemy's defense as well as apply some defensive kind of manipulating stuff, I think that she's probably going to be an A tier unit regardless of what happens to her. Even if everything works out completely disastrously, I think she's still going to be an A tier unit. However, what would it take to push her up the tiers here? Well, the first thing it would take is for the bugs to be smart. Does bugs need to be smart? So when you're applying them, you can apply them quickly and you can apply them consistently. And that would be a big step in the right direction. So if the bugs get applied in a smart fashion, that's a big one. The next thing which I think that Silverwolf would absolutely need is a reasonable duration on her ultimate. So right now the ultimate, we don't know how long it lasts. In the past, it's lasted 3 turns. Well, hopefully it lasts 3 turns now, because that's going to be a big part of her viability. So overall, I would expect it to last 3 turns as well still. You know, if they downgrade it to 2 turns or even 1 turn, that would be a disaster. But let's say that it's going to be 3 turns. Well, that's going to be pretty good. All right, so the thing which is going to push her up, and into the S and S plus tier though is going to be the skill. And it's going to be completely reliant on how this works. With the other 2 things working in their best case scenario, she's still just going to be A tier in my books. She's kind of like a single target Pella who is quantum, who can break a whole lot more and apply extra damage kind of multipliers. But when it comes to her uniqueness, when it comes to her selling point, the thing which will define her is going to be the skill, and understanding exactly how it works and all of the intricacies and the nuances and everything to do with it. That is going to be her major selling point here. So we're going to spend the rest of the video talking about the skill and also categorizing it into different kind of ways that it could work out, and of course how powerful they'll be and whether or not that'll impact her viability. So this skill has been reworked more times than I think I've seen any other character get adjusted in this game. It is crazy how many iterations this has gone through, but the current iteration is definitely a pretty big departure from what she's had in the past. It is substantially weaker and far more restrictive, which I think is what prompted a lot of the negativity relating to her kit. However, the overall nerfs do not mean that she is not viable. It's still a very powerful skill. It's definitely very strong. It's just a lot harder to use and a lot more specific. But depending on how it works, it actually could almost even be better than what we've seen in the past. So we're gonna have to see that. But let's break down exactly what it does here, and we'll discuss a little bit about the ways that it could work and how that might impact her. So first and foremost here, we've got the usual. It's got a base chance to apply a weakness of an ally's type to the enemy and reduce their damage resistance to that element. So you get a vulnerability to implant, and you also get to shred a little bit of resistance, which is pretty great. But the caveat here is if the enemy already has that weakness, the effect of the reduction will not happen. So if you implant ice, they were already weak to ice, well, you're not going to get any sort of benefit really at all because they're already weak to that element, and then you also don't get the damage res reduction, which isn't good. It means you basically whiffed. And in addition to that, you can only have 1 weakness implanted on the enemy at a time with Silverwolf. Now this is pretty bad because it means if you implant a weakness you do want, let's say quantum, and then you go ahead and you try and refresh that while the quantum weakness is already active or something like that, or you've got like a kind of scenario in which you want to apply it again, well, overall, you could remove the weakness which you already had on there, which you liked, and replace it with a weakness you don't. And nowhere in here does it actually state whether or not you can manipulate the weaknesses which are on the enemy. So it's not like you can have a controlling element over what's going on here. It just says a weakness of your ally's type. So the only way to force this would be to have 1 type of ally, so all quantum. In the event that you had ice and quantum, it could choose either of them. Let's say that the enemy is weak to ice but not quantum. Well, in theory, based on this wording, it could just continually apply ice because you have ice members in your party and the enemy's already weak to ice and you're not going to get any damage reduction. So that would definitely suck. So overall, that is a really bad timeline for this skill here. And that's honestly the way it reads. The way it reads is what I just described. You could definitely get pretty screwed with the way that it currently looks like it works. Let's continue though here. All right, so it says that when Silverwolf implants another weakness on the target, only the most recently one will be implanted, which is basically just supporting what we talked about earlier. You can only have 1 weakness, which is definitely a pretty big and finicky thing to manage with Silverwolf. All right, so in addition, it also says that there is an extra chance to reduce the resistance of all types on the enemy for an amount of turns as well. So that's pretty good. So you do get a bit of a consolation prize there if you use the skill on an enemy, and overall, they're already weak to that type. So, you know, depending on how much that is, it could be pretty reasonable. And then of course it deals a flat amount of quantum damage. Alright guys, so what is going to determine how powerful she is? Well, I'm going to give you guys 3 different scenarios, and I'm going to talk about each of them and how powerful they are, and then we're going to attribute each of those scenarios to a different tier rank, at least in my eyes and my opinion. So I think there's 3 different ways that the skill could work, and they are wildly different in their power levels, and I think a lot of these do come from the community, so, we're going to be discussing them at length here. Alright, so the first thing to discuss is going to be the weakest way the skill could work. So as we read it right now, it kind of feels like the skill will be applying a lot of its stuff at random, based on your team. It doesn't really say anything about interacting with the enemy or having any kind of input from what the enemy already has on them. So the weakest way to interpret the skill is as follows. All right, so you can see here on my diagram, I have a beautiful picture here. We've got 3 ice units here. These boxes are your team. So you get 3 ice units and you've got 1 quantum unit here. This is your team. Right, and then we've got an enemy here, and they are currently weak to quantum, fire, and wind here. And Silverwolf is about to use her skill. So using the exact wording of the skill, when you use the skill on this enemy, what it's going to do first is it's going to check your team, and it's going to see, okay, we've got ice, and we've got quantum. All right, it could be ice or quantum that I'm implanting here. All right, so it's going to go ahead and dump an ice or quantum implant on the enemy here. And in theory, it should be 50-50 here. And, if I get ice, brilliant. That was what I wanted because my team is an ice composition here. That's exactly what I wanted. Oh yeah. But if I get quantum, that is already present on the enemy. And remember, there's a massive penalty for trying to apply a vulnerability that is already on the enemy. So we won't get the vulnerability and we won't get the defense resistance shred either, which is pretty bad. Meaning we lost the most of our skill there and we lost a 50-50, which kind of sucks. And it means you would need to take that 50-50 in this scenario every single time. You're going to get ice, or you're going to get quantum, and as soon as this wears off, you have to take the 50-50 again, which would definitely be a pretty big pain. And in this scenario, if the skill works like this, I personally would consider Silverwolf an A tier unit, of course, pending any kind of numbers and, crazy numbers on anything. I would consider an A tier unit personally, because this is definitely going to be pretty hard to use. You can use it, but it's definitely very RNG related. It kind of puts her almost into a QQ scenario. She's very RNG heavy. Now, what's the next way that this skill could work? Well, there is also a theory that, okay, let's take a look at our team here. So when we're applying this weakness to the enemy, it says that it's based on your allies' elements. Well, I have 3 ice allies and 1 quantum ally. So, maybe the skill has a higher chance to apply ice than quantum because, I have more ice allies, surely there's a higher chance to pick ice. And that would give me now more control over how this weakness implanting works. I would have a 75-25 chance to get the exact weakness that I want here, which would be way, way stronger here. I'd have a much higher chance of getting ice, which would be way, way stronger. And in that case, I would personally consider Silverwolf an S tier unit because she would be able to control the kind of overall flow of how the elements are being applied. And that's very, very important. It's going to make it way less RNG, way less attempts, and all that sort of stuff in the end game when you're doing the cutting edge content, which is really, really important. Now, the third way, which I think would make her really strong, and I would honestly wager, pretty close to an S+ tier unit in terms of supports, she'd probably be our first Nihility S+ personally, from my opinion, on my tier lists, would be if there is a hidden mechanic in play, which allows you to actually heavily manipulate what weaknesses you are implanting to a massive degree. And that third way would be the ability to block weaknesses you don't want. So the third way here would be as follows. So the enemy has a quantum weakness already. And Silverwolf here is quantum. So when she's going to apply a weakness, it's going to check the enemy, it's going to see that it has quantum, and overall it'll be like, I've already got quantum, we're going to only apply ice in this scenario to make sure that it's going to be useful. And that would mean that we'd go from a 50 to a 75 to 100% chance to apply ice to the enemy every single time, which would make it a guarantee, which means you would be able to force an element every single fight with no RNG involved, which would be incredibly powerful because then you would never whiff and you would always be able to have the res reduction, the buffs that you want. Overall, it's going to be incredibly powerful and way, way stronger. But it doesn't just stop there. Being able to block elements like this in this way would allow you to completely change the teams on offer. So right now, you would have to run 3 ice units with Silver Wolf, which would be pretty rough. You know, in this scenario, the only team which I can think of would be Yangqing, Pella, Japad/March 7th, as well as Silver Wolf herself. And, you know, is that team the best? You know, it's definitely not bad, but, you know, is it, you know, ideal? Well, it's definitely not a freedom kind of enforcing team here. You've got a pretty restrictive roster. But if this is the way it works, well, suddenly, now that this enemy is weak to wind, well, one of these can become Bronya. It doesn't matter because we have wind. Okay, that's blocked already. We don't need to worry about that. And another character could become fire main character, for example, because we've already got a fire weakness here that's blocked, meaning we always still get to implant the ice weakness that we wanted. And that would make Silver Wolf substantially stronger, and it would free up her team building possibilities and potential substantially. So you wouldn't need to go mono ice, mono quantum, or anything like that, because the elements are just blocked. You can bring the units that the elements are already vulnerable to and have that not be interfering with the way that you play. And this would mean that Silver Wolf would be S+ tier, for me at least, on my own tier list. Alright, so let me give you guys my final prediction on Silver Wolf. I've done a lot of theory crafting with a lot of stuff. I've basically consumed all the information on the internet about this character. I want to tell you guys what I think. I think that the character will likely work the third way that I just described with the skill. I also think Bugs will be smart, and I think that Mihoyo will release her in the most favorable way possible and make her as completely broken as possible. That is my prediction. I think she probably will be an S or S+ tier unit, and I think that there's going to be a lot of flexibility in the way that her teams will be built. And I'm also going to put a crazy thing out there. I think that with Eidolons, she's going to be able to be played as a DPS, which rivals some of the strongest DPSs in the game. And that is going to be my take on Silver Wolf. So it's definitely a pretty bullish take, but I just can't imagine that Silver Wolf is going to be released in a woeful state, given how much hype, given that she's Bronya, given that she's got all of Mihoyo's backing, there's promotional material, there's all sorts of stuff like that. It's the hype period. I don't think they're going to release a flop. I think she will be good. I think she's going to be strong. And it remains to be seen. I can't wait to be wrong. You guys can make fun of me then, but I think she's going to be pretty good. And make sure you look out for the guide for her so we can see how strong she truly will be. I can't wait to play with her. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to check on a like if you liked it, and of course subscribe to the channel for more content if you want. Until next time, hope you guys enjoyed. Cheers.